everybody's moving a million miles an hour, especially entrepreneurs and people with young families.
Yeah.
You don't have the capacity or you don't create the time and space to think or do and have these conversations. What I do if I like really zoom out, I'm just creating a little bubble for people to have that because they're not going to do it for themselves. To have that space to reflect on like, how am I doing this week? What do I need? What are my goals?
Welcome to Conversations with. On this show, my guests and I explore the bumps and triumphs of their journey to extract the gems from their experiences because success leaves clues, and today we turn those clues into billboards for you. I'm your host, Gene Bernier, founder of Peeled Back, speaker and co-active coach, guiding leaders to pursue a life worth living. Welcome. Joining us today is Fyfe Barraclough, the renowned personal leadership and mental fitness consultant from Vancouver, BC. As someone deeply acquainted with the highs and the lows of entrepreneurship, Fyfe has become a guiding force for high achievers navigating chaos. From startup founders to intelligence officers, his reach and coaching realm is vast. Having owned 5 businesses himself, firsthand experience uniquely equips him to stand at the eye of the entrepreneurial storm. Now, with the Datapreneur Club, Fyfe bridges the dual challenges of fatherhood and business leadership. So let's unravel the journey of this beacon of calm in the storm of entrepreneurial work. Fyfe, my words cannot do you justice, my friend. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about this journey from owning 5 businesses. You're a father with a 17-month-old that just started walking. That's a lot for any person to be taking on, parents, mothers, or fathers themselves. But being a dad, stepping into this entrepreneur journey, building your practice. What's all that been like for you? What kind of originally drew you into entrepreneurship to begin with?
It happened just by chance. I didn't necessarily have that spark to be an entrepreneur. I came back from traveling to Southeast Asia and Europe for about 6 months after university. Came back with no plans. The job that caught my eye was on Craigslist and it said, run your own business in the summer. No other context. It turned out it was a college pro
Yeah.
painting franchise, which I'd heard about growing up because I had some family that had been involved in it. That was my entry point was they walked in and gave you the business, go do it. And from that point forward, I was really excited about the idea of the freedom side of running your own business, the creativity. There's a lot of aspects that I was drawn to, but yeah, originally it wasn't something I'd ever considered up until that point.
So now you've got the box of your own painting company. What did you learn about once you started opening that box and finding out what it meant to have that freedom?
First off, I think it's one of those romantic visions that a lot of people have about entrepreneurship is your own boss, you have your own time schedule, all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of sacrifice and a lot of tough times. So I
Mhm.
think for me, it gave me like a way to test myself and prove that I could do something. I had people beside me running franchises that are still some of my best friends. One turned out to be my business partner in a business I just sold in August. So a lot of it has been an amazing network, but it forced my hand to do things that were uncomfortable for me, like cold calling, hiring and letting people go. And just because I was forced to go through some of those challenges, you inevitably create some confidence because you can look back and be like, oh, wow, I did some of those things that I didn't think I would have done on my own. So you build your own
Right.
confidence by doing it.
Yeah. And what was it like as you build your own confidence? Was the entrepreneurial result that happened? You talked about the romanticized component of being your own boss and the sacrifices that come with that. Looking back on that young man who started that, what would you tell him now about that romanticized component?
I don't know if I had that romantic notion going in. I chat with a lot of friends that aren't entrepreneurs, and most people now are aware of how challenging it can be. I did interviews with entrepreneurial dads, and there's a lot of the same kind of mentality or conversation. It's harder than I expected, even though they knew it was going to be hard. So looking
Yeah.
back, yeah, I don't think I had that same rose colored lens when I started. but I still catch myself now every once in a while. It would feel more easy and stable just to have a job. You don't have those same ups and downs of the roller coaster.
Yeah.
So it comes and goes. I try and embrace that side of entrepreneurship because I think that's part of what draws me into it is that there's that challenge. It's not easy.
Right. It's definitely not easy. You've gone through your college pro painting, business in a box, and you continued your journey of entrepreneurship. We talked about in your intro that you'd had 5 businesses. Where you're going with your coaching considered your fifth right now, or were there a few more along the way that got you into going, oh, I want to help people that are in this storm?
Yeah. So after running the painting business, I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. And my dad was actually a coactive coach. He went through that training and he was like, "Oh, you should just try out the first course." He knew me pretty well. He had a good read on what I might be a fit for. I ended up trying that and got hooked. I was like, "Wow, this is really cool." Nobody ever told me that this was a thing. Went traveling again, and when I was traveling, I was like, I'm just gonna sign up for the whole thing." But during that time, I had a little project business selling blankets and sweaters from Ecuador, which was just a fun little project. When I was down in Ecuador, I saw some really cool blankets and sweaters. Gave that a go. Didn't
Yeah.
really go very far and tied that up probably a year or 2 after I started working at a startup. But in between all of that, I bought a different franchise that was an HVAC cleaning franchise, and that was the business I just sold with my business partner. So that was running on the side with a general
Oh,
manager
wow.
in place for about almost 7 years, and then the coaching business. So I think it was 5 with the different coaching businesses and the painting and the
Yeah.
HVAC.
Well, and congratulations on your recent sell of your business. Do you mind if we take a quick detour into that? Because you mentioned that you had a general manager. A lot of the entrepreneurs that I host on this show are leading their organizations. I always find it interesting to talk with people that are investing in their businesses and putting others in charge of that. So, talk a little bit about making that decision from being in it versus owning it.
Yeah, so my business partner and I that started it, that was the vision from the get-go. We were gonna buy this franchise and have it be more of an asset, find somebody to run the business. And that came with its own set of challenges in terms of how to hire properly and how to manage from afar because the business was in Victoria. So lots of mistakes, lots of lessons with that. But it wasn't like I was in it from the start and I had to relinquish control. It was very much just get this up and running to a certain point and we're going to have somebody run it. That was the vision right from the start was it would be more of an asset that would grow without our involvement day to day.
What were some of the insights you learned as being an owner versus being the operator of the business, and how you learned to communicate between your general manager and the team, knowing this is still your asset, something that you've invested in and you want to see a return on, you want to see it be successful. So how do you handle that from that next stage up?
It was hard. I made a lot of mistakes. One of the tough lessons for me was acting more like an owner and holding accountability to the manager rather than trying to be too friendly and connected as a teammate, blurred the lines of
Mm,
holding expectations. There was an aspect of not having as much clarity on the expectations that we did have. So, what are the expectations that we're holding accountability to? And how are we holding accountability? Going back, I would definitely have spent more time dropping in randomly and investigating and being a bit more curious rather than trying to be hands off. I think that was part of my rose colored glasses was I've got a business running without me. It's all great. And I think it could have been different had I spent a little bit more time and gave a bit more concern to just having my nose in there a little bit differently.
right. And where you take this concept of understanding your role as the owner of the business, maybe this was something that will face you down the road. What would it mean to be a little bit more curious from that owner standpoint? Like somebody that's watching this going, I'd like to be owning the business, but not working in it. That's part of this entrepreneurial dream is that we're all going to build these things and just stand back and watch them grow. But you actually, from what you're saying, some of the mistakes you took was not being involved to the degree that you now know you should be in that role. So what would that look like now for you?
I heard the term once, trust but verify. So trust your team, have faith in them, but also have a way of verifying exactly what's happening, not blind trust. I think that's something that I probably didn't do as well, was doing more spot checks, like going over to the business, just dropping in and spending all day following people around, doing more shadowing. Just show me how you do this. I think I let it go too much. I also let myself get distracted with other things that I was focused on. I was working in a startup. I was running my own business. There was a lot that was distracting me from that. So there was some other
Right.
learning too. It's harder to have a business on the side that you're focused on. You can give the attention it needs to, even if you're not in it. Just because your mind is so focused and in other places. Even if you're not in the business, you still need to have a certain awareness and time spent thinking about it. My business partner brought a lot to the table,
Right.
which was really helpful. So that attention is tough, like being pulled between it all.
Attention. You've got a young family and other businesses, your coaching practice that you're building up, all vying for that attention and knowing how to give it and prioritizing the right way to deploy that attention is also what I'm hearing.
Yeah, for sure.
What drew you into this datapreneur space and starting down this journey of identifying that fathers have this dual role as being fathers, and some of us are also trying to lead businesses. How did you identify the gap there? What wasn't being spoken to?
Yeah. So I quit my job at the startup to move into coaching full time. And pretty early on, there's a lot of focus on who's my ideal customer, what is that niche. And I feel like I was kind of bumbling through that. I'd have clarity for a couple months and then I'd be like, it's not quite it. And I'd like revamp it. And when my daughter was born, I realized a lot of the coaching concepts I'd picked up through proactive coaching, a lot of what I'd picked up through mental fitness coaching was serving me in those chaotic first couple months, just to be present with my daughter despite sleep deprivation and a bunch of stuff happening in the business. So there was things that I was implementing
Yeah,
naturally through experience and skills that I had built up through coaching. And I think dads would benefit from this. Like put me on this path of I'd never considered working with dads because I wasn't one. And who would I be to like coach a dad if I wasn't a dad? So it opened up this whole other space to be like, here's a niche I'd never considered. What are their challenges and pain points? I'm feeling some of that right now. And just started to explore that a little bit more. Maybe it's high performing dads. Maybe it's first time dads. I don't know yet. And my coach challenged me to interview 50 entrepreneurial dads. It's like, you are your niche. I was like, who am I? I'm a dad and I'm an entrepreneur. So I took that
yeah,
on and interviewed a bunch of dadpreneurs, which is how we initially met. And
I believe so.
through
Yes.
that, started to explore like, what are those challenges? What are those unique pain points that you have when you're trying to balance challenging things? And things that take a lot of attention. It can be really stressful, but it's also really rewarding. So it's been this iterative approach of who do I want to work with? And it just kind of happened that I started to follow that thread.
Right. You said something that really hits the like, who am I to do any of this? Right. Like Fyfe is saying, I'll bear my own open kimono here. That's a journey in my own coaching practice. I continue to go through. It's like you get those like, oh, this feels right for 3, 4 months. And you're like, something's quite click, and then all of a sudden, none of it makes sense until you start to really hone into it. And it sounds like you landed in this place from that one quote going, "I am my niche. I am feeling these things." And now after talking to 50 other dads who are also in business going, they're feeling a lot of the same things that I am. What from that just interviewing the 50 men going, was there like an aha moment for you or maybe a bit of a, "Oh, I'm not the only one" moment more than an aha moment as you were going through and hearing some of their journeys?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd share something and then they would be like, oh, I'm not alone. Like the people I was interviewing, because I had 50 conversations to draw from and share, because a lot of them would be really curious. What are you
Yeah,
hearing from these other guys? I'd share a couple of the key themes and they're like, oh, totally, I totally feel that. So it was really validating to go through that process because it's validating my experience. I'm not alone. And that was one of the key challenges was loneliness and isolation. As a new dad, all of a sudden you're focused on this kid and your family and your social circle recedes a little bit. You just don't have as much time to hang out with your buddies or do the things that you used to do. In a business, a lot of the guys I chatted with were working from home. So you don't have that same social engagement going to an office and connecting with people. So there's a lot of loneliness and isolation that I don't think people would have said up front, but through asking about it, it's really sitting in the forefront. And that led me to start doing some community calls, share what's going on as an entrepreneurial dad, because you don't really have the
Yeah.
same space. And a lot of guys were saying, I have friends that are dads, but they're not entrepreneurs, or I have friends that are entrepreneurs and they're not dads. And it's you can still get a lot of value having
Yeah.
conversations with each, but it's just not the same level of understanding and connection as somebody that's dealing with both.
Yeah. The two come together and make this unique experience with a bunch of overlap on both sides. We talked about the attention and where does that go? How do you be the dad? How do you be the partner? How do you be the worker and still be your whole self? Mike, how do I get not lost in all of this?
It's hard. But I think that's part of the journey. That's part of figuring it out and having some fun with it. It can be overwhelming, but how do you reframe that to be like, this is what I signed up for? What a unique gift and opportunity for me to lean into.
My co-host on another show, he always talks about there's value in getting lost because if we didn't get lost, we wouldn't get found, right? He loves to bring back on our show and with his clients when they're like, ah, I'm lost. Like, great. That means you get to be found. What is going to happen from here? It's like, oh, this isn't a bad thing. There's lots of experience and unfortunate stats out there that show how bad it can really get, especially in that entrepreneur space and with men. So being able to bring men together to talk about this stuff, going, you are experiencing it. It is real for you. And you get to choose how you're going to move forward from this. You've started these men's community conversations to invite the men in. Where is this now taking this on this journey? And how are you feeling after a while now being connected to, oh, I am my niche? The more that you're doing, are you finding that continues to really reinforce this is my niche?
Yes. Yes, and it's also like I still have that, "Have I found the right thing?" Like, there's a little bit of that creeping doubt that always sneaks in, and I have to just catch that for what it is. But, yeah, it's been
Yeah.
really cool. The conversations were great. I think we're on, like, month 10 of doing these monthly calls, which has been really cool, and I get a ton of insight from those. And I'm at a stage now where I wanna take it to the next level, so I'm actually, as of yesterday, just locked in 5 guys to do a mastermind test, a paid 4-month program, just to validate what programming I think would benefit them. I'm excited to see where that goes and envision building a specific tighter knit community that's a little bit more engaged because the free community, it's kinda like, "Yeah, if you wanna come, you can come. If not, no biggie." So having people
Yeah.
that are committed and showing up consistently is where you get a lot of the value. So that's this next stage that I'm excited to see where
Right.
that goes. And yeah, I don't have an end goal with it. I'm really trying to listen to what people are saying, test things, see what shows up, and have fun with that iterative process. I definitely have to catch myself
Right.
because one of the ways I get in my own way is I overthink things and I have to have a big plan. Yeah, like, where's this going? How's it? It's like, no, just what's the next step? Just do that thing
Yeah.
today. Just see where it goes. You'll get to where you need to go eventually, and just enjoying that type of process.
What I hear there is you're trusting the unfolding of it. Like a flower, it has a specific pattern that it has to unfold to for it to be shown. And there's no amount of rushing it that's going to make it go any faster or skipping the steps, but trusting within it, be like, okay, this still feels right. I hear my little saboteur showing up. It's all right. We're still moving forward. And more of it starts to unfold for you.
Yeah,
For people that may not know what a mastermind is, what does that look like? How does it benefit the people that participate in them? And how are you bringing your own spin into that term and that world for these 5
yeah.
months?
So one of the components as a mental fitness coach, I just believe full-heartedly it's a foundational tool that'll bring a foundational language to How are you self-sabotaging? How do you have more presence and better control of your attention and focus? Through that'll build some connections between the guys in the group. But as a mastermind, the focus will be more on you have a sounding board of other guys in this small tight-knit group to bounce ideas off of, to be challenged by, to push you to step in and level up where you probably wouldn't on your own, and to have support when things don't go as well. It's a space to step into where if you're stuck on something, whether it's a technical challenge in your business or maybe a larger stuck point mentally, you have people to lean on that are in your corner and can give advice or wisdom or insights. And there's also a big component is a level of accountability. So, hey, I'm lonely, I'm on my own, I work from home. Nobody knows what I'm doing or working on. So it's a way to say, hey guys, here's the three things I want to get done this week. And next week they're gonna check in on me and be like, did you get it done? And that
Right.
helps move things forward and bring clarity to what you're actually working on.
Within that accountability of holding each other in that space, the accountability earlier in the conversation to be like, there's entrepreneurs and there's dads, and sometimes they don't always overlap. Where's the overlap? Being able to see not only for you and your own niche, but when you recognize, oh, I don't have to explain what it's like to be both an entrepreneur and a dad. These people are already getting that. So we can start that movement so much faster. I've done mastermind groups in the past. It's like when you're working with somebody and they get where you're
Mm.
at because they've been in those shoes or they're currently in those shoes, and you don't have to fill in the whole world of the context. Let's get to the heart of what's actually happening here now.
Yeah. And I think that's the fun part of this is there's just a get it factor. There's an immediate bond like, oh, you're going through this. I trust you a bit more. It's not that we don't trust other people. It's like, oh, you get me. We're connected because of a shared
Yeah.
experience. And it's powerful. It's powerful to have that and lean into that and then be challenged by that too. Because, oh, this person's
Oh yeah.
alongside me and they're gonna push me to be to do more or better or see things differently. It lands differently than somebody who's very different at a very different stage of life and business, trying to push you into something or challenge you to level up.
Well, I think it's also hard for that saboteur that shows up, goes, oh, you don't know what it's like. And whatever feedback or accountability, it kind of drops into that space of like, you don't know my life versus somebody that comes in and goes, you're 5 years behind me. I know exactly where you're at. You're like, uh-oh, this is going to get real fast. And then it makes it incredibly difficult to deflect what comes from
Yeah.
that space, right? It's just like talking to your mom or your dad. Hopefully they have your back, but they don't get where you're at. Same thing with talking with your partner or that friend, but somebody that's in the trenches doing their own game, playing this in that same space. You're like, oh, you get it. I get it. I get to see what's happening for you and call that up too, which is also a space as a dad and an entrepreneur. Sometimes being the leaders, you can't be Mr. Blunt. But if you're in a space where it's actually, we need the bluntness to get to the trueness of what's actually happening, it can be really welcomed and an experience that can be honed instead of being an unused
Mhm.
instrument.
The other thing that came up for me, I had a number of guys say something on the lines of, like, "I wanna see under the hood about how other guys are doing dadpreneurship." It's easier to see how an entrepreneur is doing things, but it's hard to actually get in and be like, "Okay, what are you actually doing day to day? How are you doing it? What's under the hood?"
Yeah.
You only see what people are doing when they're out walking around and how much self-filtering is happening. So just being open and honest, like, my kid had a total tantrum at home and totally messed up how I dealt with that. Those conversations don't happen very often. So it's a way to really open the door to what's actually going on and see the value that can be gained from some of that vulnerable sharing.
I love that concept of being there to open up the hood. It's like the imagery is going to a classic car show. What kind of
Yeah.
engine you got in there? What do you got happening? And being able to share that openly and honestly is really powerful. It also is like being the person that can share that, be like, I get to let this out. And no, it doesn't make me a bad person or fill in the blank, anything. What do I need to do with this? Am I missing something? Somebody else might know how to fix that problem. What is now going through this experience, now that you're building your own programs, talking and working with datapreneurs, What is that concept of accountability? Has that changed in how you've understood it as you've started to really get into this space?
I'm still learning about accountability, how to hold that for clients because everybody's different and everybody comes from a different place about how they want accountability. What I'm learning anyways is my my need to have people like me can get in the way of just saying what needs to be said. I might sugarcoat things a little bit. I might try and dial back a little bit more than I should. And I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons that I've had in the business that we sold, but also just the last, I don't know, 5 years, just from people I've worked with too, is just tell me the hard stuff. And my instincts are don't say the hard things because then it'll impact the relationship negatively. That's what I've been working on by having those harder conversations, sharing those things that are showing up. It allows you to hold accountability better because everything's on the table.
Mm.
And if everything's not on the table, you're skirting around things. But there's a lot to unpack around accountability. Lots to learn for me still.
Yeah. I love having the hard conversations. Putting all of that on the table is in favor of the relationship. And by hiding it is actually doing the relationship a disservice. I jokingly say, maybe not jokingly anymore, but I'm a recovering people pleaser as well. I would hide all that hard stuff because I don't want you to feel bad. But not about feeling bad. How do we get through this? If this is a place where I love you, you love me, we're going to put all this on the table and talk about the problems, not the people, and really learning to separate and pull that apart, telling you the truth. I don't need to sugarcoat it to deliver it. There's ways of delivering it from this place of kindness, compassionate playfulness. It can also be a hard pill to deliver and hold that space going, I know you're going to take a moment to unpack this, and that's okay.
What I love what you said. It's about the problem, not the person. Like that's what you're pushing for. The other component is trusting that people will figure things out and that they'll be okay with whatever happens. It allows for a different type of conversation. And I remember one of my first coaches when I was getting certified, she had a tough conversation with me where we actually ended the coaching together because I was showing up with my saboteurs. I probably wasn't getting the most out of the coaching. I was distracted with things and she called me out on it. And it stung at the time. She didn't mean it to
Mm.
hurt, but I took it that way a bit. And it stuck with me, but it's been one of the greatest gifts that I've received in coaching was being pushed. It stung a little bit, but I saw things differently. It's changed how I show up with my clients. It's added so much more because somebody took that leap of faith with me. So it's one of those, it sucks, it hurts. It's a practice. I think it is a muscle that you can flex and you can do that in a loving way. There's a coach called Toku McCree. He calls it his gift is love on the end of a sword. And I was like, that's a cool way to put it.
Have you ever gone back and shared that experience that you see this now as a gift with the person that gave you that gift?
I don't know if I have. The fact that I'm not sure would say that I probably haven't. So I will
Okay,
commit to doing that. Yeah.
I love that. All right. Well, this
Yeah.
session, I asked that because a friend of mine sent me a beautiful message this morning. I don't know if this is received or if this is what people want to hear, but I'm choosing to share it. And my response is just there's something very valuable about hearing just this warm perspective that he shared about our life and our friendship. This is always welcome. Even if it was the hardest thing to hear that you had to share with me, I respect you enough. Yes, I may not like it in the moment, but don't ever hesitate from doing that. I know him. He might not have shared that even 2 years ago. And being able to be in a position now that we can, like, I don't know about you, but my guy friend group, we say I love you a lot more than even 3 years ago it used to happen. There's just this deepness and being able to say the hard things to one another continues to build on this respect and brotherhood of love that is all wrapped up into it.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have some ingrained trust, saying the hard things is harder because it won't get taken the same way. So
Oh,
that's a pretty core piece for sure.
yeah. What I see you doing with these masterminds and calls is creating that space for trust to grow. You're creating an environment that is set up for trust to grow. And as trust grows, so does the respect. So does the opportunity to be like, we're going to grind, we're going to deliver this love on the end of the sword. And everyone's excited and
Yeah.
welcoming it.
Everybody's moving a million miles an hour, especially entrepreneurs and people with young families.
Yeah.
You don't have the capacity or you don't create the time and space to think or do and have these conversations. What I do if I like really zoom out, I'm just creating a little bubble for people to have that because they're not going to do it for themselves. To have that space to reflect on like, how am I doing this week? What do I need? What are my goals? How are you doing? How I can support you? It's just everybody's moving so fast. It's it's something I'm trying to cultivate more, but I move a little bit slower. Because one of the things that frustrated my business partner. He's a quick decision maker, and I would
Yeah.
just go a little bit slower. But that's also what I'm strong at, and it's a bit of a yin and yang. But I think we need a little bit more of
Yeah.
a pace check sometimes.
100%. Rate of play definitely needs to come into play for both going too slow and
Yeah,
going too fast, and finding your Goldilocks space where you can be like, I'm really connected. Everything's resonating
yeah.
right now. Life, as I look up, we crossed the threshold, my friend. Thank you for talking about this journey, the experience with accountability and trust and all we've covered today. For my last question, this is an opportunity to tell us everything about what's going on. How can people get more connected with the Datapreneur Club and what else you have on coming?
Thanks. I just launched this mastermind group for dadpreneurs. My intention is this will be the first of many cohorts. So likely there'll be another one probably in January. So I'm hoping it becomes more of a program. People can message me. LinkedIn's probably easiest. That's where I'm most active. So Fyfe Barraclough, you can just find me on LinkedIn. Outside of that, I'm doing one-on-one coaching with entrepreneurs and high performers, more on the kind of like performance and mindset side of stuff. And yeah, do some mental fitness programming and coaching if any of that's interesting. I'm always happy to have a chat, go for a coffee. I like connecting with people, so let me know.
Awesome. And all those links will be in the show notes down below. My last question is, we're going to jump into my time machine. We're going to go ahead 10 years into the future. When that door opens, there's older you. What does he say thank you to you for?
I think I would say just thanking me for sticking with it, being resilient, and just like keep keep running your race at your pace. Don't give up, even though it might be tough, because I'll probably regret that more than the challenge.
Thank you again, my friend, for being on the show. My name is Gene. This is Conversations with, reminding you, run your own race and keep at the pace that's right for you. Until next week, we'll see you all then. Oh, one last thing. It's the legal language. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professionals.